Unless part of a movie trilogy, you never really need a sequel, and that especially goes for the horror genre. But horror movies are made for so cheap and usually make so much money that the studios would be stupid not to squeeze every franchise for what they're worth. However, whereas Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Child's Play generally get cannibalized, the original Halloween is actually regarded as a classic horror film. Go figure. Honestly, it really didn't call for a sequel. It ends with a perfect air of mystery. When Dr. Loomis looks over that balcony and finds that Michael Myers has gotten up and walked away, he isn't surprised. He gives a look as if he knew it was inevitable. When you get to Halloween 2, which takes place on the same exact night, this has changed somewhat. When they originally filmed Halloween, they shot Donald Pleasance giving two different reactions. There was the reaction we see in the first film, where he's sincere and knows what to expect. And then there's the version in Halloween 2, where he is shocked and goes screaming for the police.
Call the police! Tell the sheriff I shot him! Who? Tell him he's still on the loose!
It's a minor inconsistency, but one that bears mentioning. I complained about the first Halloween, how it didn't have a lot of violence and most of the film was just a big build-up to the finale. Whereas it borrowed from movies like Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, most modern slashers borrow from Halloween, and that's saying something. Carpenter crafted a film that had such a mass appeal that everyone stole from it. That's inspiring, but I still look at it as a mediocre slasher film that gets noted for its cinematic influence more than the quality of the overall film. Halloween 2, on the other hand, while often overlooked, is more of your traditional slasher film, so I appreciate it that much more. The film came out in 1981, so it was competing with Friday the 13th Part 2, which is why I think they upped the gore a little bit. But aside from that, it does what a lot of other horror sequels fail to do. They actually move the story forward. Particularly, we find out what Michael Myers' relationship to victim Laurie Strode is, because he spends so much of the movie stalking her. For once, I won't spoil it for the three people that don't know, but let's not forget that The Empire Strikes Back had come out the preceding year, so doing this kind of thing at that point wasn't necessarily cliché, just robbery. Right from the opening titles, I love how the camera slowly pushes into the jack-o'-lantern, which is reminiscent of the first film, until the jack-o'-lantern splits apart, revealing a twisted kind of skull in its grinning center. The music is also a lot stronger. This is such an effective way to get this movie started. It might actually be the most chilling moment in the whole film. Near the beginning, Sheriff Brackett discovers that his daughter Annie was one of Myers' victims.
Damn you.
Sorry.
What have you done?
I haven't done anything.
You let him out!
I didn't let him out. I gave orders for him to be restrained.
Leaving Dr. Loomis to pester Deputy Hunt for the remainder of the film. Loomis seems a little more jittery in this film, constantly waving his gun around. In the first film, he was trying to prevent his patient from killing anyone. In this one, Myers has already started the killing, so as a character, this is understandable. However, we also start to see him pave a bad reputation for himself. There's a scene where he thinks he sees Myers walking around amidst trick-or-treaters, and is somewhat to blame for a resulting accident that causes the death of an innocent teenager. We find out, obviously, that this person isn't Michael Myers, but what's interesting is this one single shot where we see Myers' reflection in a car's side mirror. He looks like he's been burned, even though it wasn't him in the accident. Also, as I stated in my Halloween review, most of the time Loomis spouts out the same speech about what kind of demon Michael is.
There was a force inside him, biding its time. The staff grew accustomed to his immobility and silence. In many ways, he was the ideal patient. He didn't talk, he didn't cry, he didn't even move.
I was exaggerating a little bit. He doesn't use the exact same dialogue, but nevertheless, we've heard it before, only to be reiterated again. And I swear, in every film we have to hear this in some shape or form. However, there's also a scene where he explains the history of Sam Hain, which basically explains the true meaning of Halloween. It's an interesting monologue, but doesn't add much to the story. It's a typical paint-by-the-numbers slasher. Most of it takes place in a hospital, which is a pretty creepy atmosphere, and there's all sorts of tools at Michael's disposal. The thing I don't understand is why most of the film they have him running around with a little scalpel. There's a ridiculous scene where he stabs a nurse with it and then lifts her off her feet. Why couldn't they have him use his infamous carving knife? It's a lot more threatening to have him use this than this. At one point, they make it seem as if Laurie might have died in the hospital, only to reveal that she's just overly medicated. This makes her confrontation with Michael even more suspenseful, because she's completely defenseless and doesn't have complete control over her actions. So, getting away, she's more like a wounded animal. And I have to say, the climax in this one is far better than in the originals. It's got some pretty memorable deaths, namely the scene in the steam room, which is more gruesome than you'd expect for an early Halloween film. I'm still having a problem with Michael Myers as the chief villain, because again, he looks like a walking mannequin than an actual person, although they try to make him a little more aggressive, and they still manage to pull off his hiding in the shadows trick. It works just as well as the first film, but gives us a little more bang for our buck. Shamefully, I think the graphic violence in this one turned off a lot of fans of the original, but this is really what you think of when you think of slasher film. I think which one you like better, Halloween 1 or 2, is more a matter of personal preference, but for me, this one is the superior horror experience. Either way, give it a try.
Julie said he was so creepy.
Julie's full of shit. He didn't escape until last night.
You don't have to swear, bud.
Well, she's a goddamn moron anyway.
Every other word you say is either hell or shit or damn.
Sorry. I guess I just fuck up all the time.